Hey, good morning, everybody. Yes, I'm back to give you the second video that I wanted to do last night, but it was too it was getting late and I just wanted to rest a little bit, let the computer rest as well. And that is of the abandoned and unused concepts, this time under Ian Flynn. Now, the last video, which by the time I'm doing this recording has yet to premiere on YouTube, it'll premiere within probably the hour. Um, But basically, the last video I did was on Ken Penders and Carl Bowlers, and some of the ideas and concepts they had for for the comic, but those ideas and concepts were never used. So now I'm here to talk about, of course, the ones that Ian Flynn had in mind, but never got a chance to use them. So without further ado, ooh, let's talk about them, shall we? All right, the article starts off by saying, and I quote, "This page is dedicated to plot ideas and concepts conceived by or under head writer Ian Flynn that were never used in Archie Sonic the Hedgehog, Archie Comics Sonic the Hedgehog, or the spin-off Sonic universe, either due to the disapproval of Sega or the legal issues surrounding Ken Penders' characters and concepts and the resulting reboot slash soft reboot slash retcon that followed Worlds Collide, which was the Mega Man Sonic crossover." Alright, the first section is dedicated to pre Worlds Collide. In other words, when Ian Flynn first started getting the ball rolling on his run. This is what the article says, and I quote, "Ian had attempted to get E-123 Omega into the comic earlier than Sonic Universe number 3. His first attempt would have had him kill Tommy Turtle. Tommy Turtle is a character that was brought in during the Ken Penders, Carl Bowlers, Mike Gallagher runs. Continuing. His second attempt would have had him participate in the destruction of Knothole. Sega nixed them both, probably because they didn't want a mainstream character caught in the acts of mass murder." Now let's talk about that for a second. What they're saying here, and obviously this is coming from Ian Flynn's own words, or people close to Ian. Ian wanted to bring in E-123 Omega, who is a established character in the Sonic games, associated mostly with Shadow and Rouge, and he wanted to bring him in to have him either kill Tommy Turtle, who, like I said, was a character originally brought in during the Penders, Bowlers, and Gallagher runs, the basically in the late portion of those runs. But Sega said no to that. And then the second attempt was the destruction of Knothole. Sega said no to that because they did not want, as the article said, a character that gets played by by gamers in the Sonic games, as well as somewhat of a fan favorite, being responsible for the death of a non-game character, comic exclusive character, or the destruction of an established location. So, yeah. All right, continuing on, and I quote, "Earlier plans for Interjack Reborn had it so that it was Constable Remington who would be the new Irrijack. This was abandoned when it was decided Remington was not a familiar face to the readership, and that the arc would have spent too much time refreshing readers on who he is." I guess that it does kind of make sense. Continuing on. And in case you guys don't know who Remington is, Constable Remington was one of the Echidna supporting characters, comic exclusive characters that Ken Penders had created for the Knuckles portion of the series. Continuing on. At one point, Ian considered showcasing the members of the Dragon Kingdom Freedom Fighters in an homage to the Furious Five from DreamWorks' Kung Fu Panda series, but the idea was ultimately scrapped and the characters' identities remained a mystery. Okay, so apparently Ian wanted to. I guess Ian's a fan of the Kung Fu. I guess Ian's a fan of the Kung Fu Panda movie series, liked the team of the Furious Five, and said, "Hey, I want to bring them in." That did not happen. Continuing on. Just drinking some coffee there. All right, continuing on. Original plans for the story, which began in Sonic 225, originally didn't include the Genesis saga. The first draft of the story, number 225, would have ended with Sally's robotization, and they put in parentheses an event that was instead moved to 230. It was decided by editor Paul Kaminsky that what was planned wasn't enough to celebrate the Sonic franchise's 20th anniversary. So basically, it was Paul Kaminsky, who was also another prominent figure behind the scenes, also during the Penders, Bowlers, and Gallagher and other lead writers' run prior to Ian Flynn. Paul Kaminsky was a key integral part behind the scenes on that run, or during that time frame and Ian's time frame. And I guess he decided that we can't just celebrate Sonic's 20th anniversary by ending the 225th issue with Sally roboticized. We need to do something that's going to pay homage to that, and that's where I guess the Sonic Genesis story arc came out of nowhere and became exactly that. And that's how, of course, the Genesis wave came to be as well. So yeah, Paul Kaminsky basically said, "No, Ian, it's a good idea, but let's hold off on it for several issues and find something else that's going to help celebrate Sonic's 20th anniversary." Now, continuing on with the article, and this gonna check something here, okay. But continuing on with the article, Sonic number 237 was originally slated. Sonic number two. Okay, let me redo that. Let me reread that. Hold on. Sonic number 237 was originally slated as including a mysterious figure who would be following Sonic and the other members of Team Fighters. Though confirmed in the story to be Lita and Lyco, who were part of Loop the Wolf's tribe and group of freedom fighters, the Wolfpack, Flynn later revealed that it was originally going to be MIA, missing in action, Hershey St. John, basically Jeffrey St. John's love interest and later wife. Hershey was also intended to be included in the roster of the Secret Freedom Fighters, but was replaced with Lita and Lyco. So, yeah. Basically, like I mentioned in the Sally retrospective, basically the reason for the reboot, as it was also mentioned here at the beginning with this article, Ken Penders wanted royalties for the use of his characters. He was suing for copyright infringement. He basically was blaming Archie Comics and Sega for not giving his permission to use his characters. A lot of, behind the scenes hoopla that wasn't unnecessary. And what happened was Hershey, who was originally in the plans to be part of this, to be part of 237 and 238, as well as the Secret Freedom Fighters, that was ixnayed thanks to the legal situation, and Lita and Lyco, part of Loop's Wolfpack Freedom Fighters, were brought in instead. So yeah, not a good move on either side, but honestly, if I was Ken Penders, I would have let the thing play out, and then maybe after 250, that then maybe you could decide not to let them use their characters. It would have been, to me, it would have been a better solution. But continuing on. The article states, or the article continues to state, and I quote, the original plans for the chaos. Okay, hold on. Let me just. Got it. Thank you. Just need to get more coffee there. It's early in the morning. Okay, continuing on. The original plans. This is what the article finishes up with on the pre-Worlds Collide section. The article finishes off, and I quote, by saying, the original plans for the Chaotic Quest arc would have focused on Mighty and Ray's travels, while SBO sends word to the Shinobi clan. Mighty and Ray would eventually find themselves encountering former Robians that were left deroboticized and without any homes. Specifically, Liza, the chameleon. Lisa, it's Liza instead of Lisa. Lisa, the chameleon. Being unaware of the concept of robots, the Rainbow Valley chameleons forced her into exile out of fear upon being deroboticized. Feeling bad for her, SBO would have located her to his clan, explaining her cameo appearance during the I Dominion saga. Having been assigned to find and assist them, Lisa would have followed Mighty and Ray rather intepidly, being somewhat uncomfortable around different people and not completely comfortable with her invisibility skills. Her past life as an unwanted former Robian would have given her some common ground with Matilda and others. So, and then they have a little caption box in the corner here where it states Lisa would have been redesigned for the original Chaotic Quest arc. Lisa was sort of a minor character that it looks like Ian Flynn had other plans for, but that never came to be, I'm guessing due to the legal issues with Ken Penders behind the scenes. But after reading this section, you could definitely tell that if had it not been for the interference of Ken Penders wanting to sue the company of Archie, or the companies of Archie and Sega, for copyright infringement and not paying royalties to use his characters or get his permission, pretty much any potential plans and character developing for characters that we've come to know and love, some that we've seen before, or briefly, kind of went out the window. And did it hurt the comic in a sense? Not noticeably, but I will say that when you're promoting someone to be part of a storyline, be a major part of a portion of a huge storyline like the Mecha Sally arc, you're promoting her return, or her resurfacing, that being Hershey St. John or Hershey the cat. And you have to pull back and say, yeah, by the way, it was Lita and Lyco. Instead of Hershey, even though you dropped tons of hints throughout the comics before this. Yeah, it's not a really good sign. It's not a really good look. Look, for you as a writer that's trying to firmly establish his own stamp, his own stamp of approval, is trying to establish his own yard, if you will. It doesn't make you look good if you can't use somebody that you promoted and you have to change it around. Alright. So, next section. And the same goes with Lisa as well. So, alright. So, next section talks about Worlds Collide. And this is what it says, and I quote, during the actual Worlds Collide event, an earlier draft for the battle between the heroes in the team of Metal Sonic, Bass, and Tremba, included an idea of Metal Sonic and Bass fusing together in a fashion similar to the Super Adapter from the Mega Man series. The idea was rejected by either Sega or Capcom, but was referenced in the issue's off-panel. This fused form of the two would have been vulnerable to Rouge Roman's Black Wave. So, yeah. Apparently, and hopefully I can find this. Let's see. Okay, Ian Flynn mentioned this in a 2003, July 2003 reply to a fan. A fan basically noticed that there was no bass slash metal fusion, and that Ian had hinted at it in the off panel. What happened? You know, did Sega or Capcom interfere or anything? And Ian's reply was actually yeah. In the first draft, there was a metal bass fusion fight. I can't remember who killed it, Sega, Capcom, or both, but it was the only idea that was rejected. And then he goes on to explain, this being Ian Flynn replying to this fan in his 2003 Bumble King forums. He says, as for how it would have worked, Doctors Eggman and Riley were robotic geniuses. They could adapt the super adapter. The fight would have gone fairly similar, just with Metal Bass being a desperation move right as our heroes started to gain the upper hand. So, yeah, apparently Metal Sonic and Bass were supposed to fuse together. So, and he says that's the only one that got rejected. Although I still feel that, to me, the one thing that would have really created a lot of trauma, not trauma, but a lot of drama and possibly some conflict between Sonic and Mega Man is if they would have taken the roboticized master versions of the friends and added a combiner portion to it, to where because they added self-destruct mechanisms into them, so it would have made sense that they could have added in maybe a combiner route to where they combined into this mecha form, like let's say Blaze and Silver as, like, let's say the Chaotix as the legs and the arm, and Shadow as the head or something like that. I don't know. Or well, actually, Shadow and Amy was like the last ones, were they? I think, I'm not really sure. Silver and Amy, no, Shadow and Amy, yeah. Knuckles and so yeah, it would have been interesting if they would have done something like that, to where they would have had a combined form, like with Amy and Knuckles as the arms, and maybe Silver and Blaze as the legs, and the Chaotix coming together as an amalgamation to be the body, and the Shadow as the head. So that would have been interesting. But what are you gonna do? All right, continuing on, the next section is probably the longest section of the Ian Flynn, of this Ian Flynn deal. Probably the longest one. It is the Lost Hedgehog Tales, original old continuity plans. And here's what the article says on that. And first of all, in case you don't know, Lost Hedgehog Tales was a side project that Ian Flynn was doing after the comic was canceled. Ian Flynn had originally planned, and I still think he originally plans to, I'm not really sure, was planning to let folks in on what was originally going to happen in the stories. So, don't know if he's still going to plan to finish that off in the future or what, but hopefully he'll get the chance to. But continuing on, the section for Lost Hedgehog Tales, original old continuity plans. This is what the section says in this article. Excuse me there. But this is what the section says. Yeah, section, I should say. Sorry about that. Says in this article, and I quote, due to the effects of the Ken Penders versus Archie Comics lawsuit, many elements of the comic lore had to be removed, rendering it impossible for the original continuity to move forward. As a result, Ian Flynn was forced to abandon his original long-term plans for the series. plans that reportedly stretched as far as the comic's 300th issue. Before the effects of the lawsuit became apparent, it was known that certain planned stories had to be shifted to accommodate the inclusion of the Worlds Collide crossover storyline. Currently, Flynn, this is at the time this was posted, currently Flynn is in the process of compiling Lost Hedgehog Tales, a completely independent work to let fans in on how his original long-term plans for the comic would have played out, as well as how the heavily edited endangered species storyline would have gone. The work is being split up into chapters, the first of which was released on October 30th, 2015. On October 26, 2016, Flynn updated his post on Bumble King, revealing that due to current litigation regarding some of the affected characters, the project had to be shelved for the time being. However, on October 9th, 2017, he stated that there could be a chance that the original continuity could be continued in the IDW comics along with the new continuity. And he had said that basically about a little over a year and a half ago. So whether or not that's still going to happen, we don't know. Now, they do break up this section with what the chapters implied, and myself, along with others, had seen some of this. But this is what they say about the first chapter for Lost Hedgehog Tales. And it says, and I quote, for Chapter 1 of Lost Hedgehog Tales, it states, the first chapter gives readers some insight on ideas and concepts that went unused during the period between issues 225 to 247. And they put in the bullet points what those concepts were. The first bullet point, the first bullet point they point out is, and I quote, the original storyline would have lasted 50 issues, from 225 to 275. The intent was to have the freedom fighters suffer a devastating loss that they couldn't easily bounce back from, which is true. Basically, if you followed the issues, you listen to what people have to say in their reviews and recaps and all that, yeah, things were not looking so good for the freedom fighters. Especially with the fact that Sally had been roboticized, which again I was not a fan of. Second point they point out, originally 225 was planned to conclude with Sally's robotization before it was decided to create the Genesis Saga in celebration of Sonic's 20th anniversary. So, like I mentioned earlier, Paul Kaminsky said, no, Ian, we're not going to end it like that. We need something more to help celebrate Sonic's anniversary, and they came up with the adaptation of Sonic 1 and I think 2 with the Sonic Genesis story. Hold on for a sec. Alright, continuing on. The third point they point out, or the third bullet point they point out, Ian had in fact considered the possibility of Antoine de Coulet dying after his sacrifice. After the overwhelming fan response to Sally's supposed death at the end of 225, as well as the reaction of Ant's actual sacrifice, it was unanimously decided to have him survive. Now, in case you guys don't know, there was a moment about 4 or 5 issues in where Antoine saw Metal Sonic going after the royal family as they were trying to leave New Mobotropolis by carriage, and what happened is Antoine went and put himself in harm's way and basically got blasted right in the face thanks to Metal Sonic exploding, and thus was put into a comatose state himself. So this really, from a in-story, but this really, from a character and in-story standpoint, not just affected everybody, but really affected Bunnie. So yeah, the fact that Ian originally was going to have, Antoine die is one, obviously was in the cards and we could pretty much see it coming, But I guess due to the fan response to Sally dying in 225, and as well as the reaction to his actual sacrifice, it was unanimously decided to have him survive. So basically, it's the fans' reaction, I guess more so, that said, look, you can't. It's like, look, it's one thing to basically, try to kill off Sally a second time in the comic with having her gunned down, and as Ian Flynn put it, turned into Swiss cheese. And then later on have her survive and then basically sacrifice herself to robotization. It's one thing, as well as top that off by having her weaponized. If that's one thing, but then to do something almost close to that with another popular character in Antoine, I don't think so. So yeah, I think that was just a little too much for the fans as well as maybe the behind the scenes staff. All right, the fourth bullet point they have is this. An earlier draft of the Loyalty story arc, which was 237 to 238, had team fighters encountering the previously presumed to be dead Hershey St. John, whom had since gone undercover as a Dark Egg Legionnaire. Hershey would have revealed that she never got a chance to let Jeffrey know that she was alive, but when told of his betrayal, she would have ended her duplicity and returned to New Mobotropolis. So basically, what we're getting there is Hershey would have played a role because, as mentioned earlier, she was going to be part of the Secret Freedom Fighters instead of Lita and Lyko, and she would have probably played a huge role in Jeffrey St. John's possible redemption. Like, it's like if Jeffrey encounters them, all she has to do is probably just come forward or before he's attacked and say, okay, if you're going to attack them, attack me first. And this probably would have, maybe from a story perspective, shocked Jeffrey to where he's like, I thought you were dead. And Hershey could have been like, yeah, and I heard you betrayed. So, who knows? So, it would have been interesting where they would have gone with that. Alright, continuing on. The fifth bullet point they have, and they have some sub points as well to go with the fifth bullet point. The fifth bullet point says this, and I quote, "These changes came about primarily due to Sega's request for the Olympic Trials story in Sonic 242 being created." So in case you guys don't know, Sega decided for both the main comic and universe that right in the middle of the story arc, the Mecha Sally Death Egg Mark II World Tour 2 story arc, that it would be best to do a advertisement for the Olympics as well as for the Mario and Sonic Olympic games video game that was coming out. Yeah, Sega decided, hey, let's pause this for a minute and put this fun little story. Yeah, wasn't the best idea. They did give us a backup story, but still, really wasn't nothing. Okay, but here's basically the changes that came about primarily due to Sega's request for the Olympic Trials story in 242 being created. 1. The Hero's story arc 239 to 240, the Hero's story arc, originally 239 to 240, was originally planned to be a three-parter. The first two parts would have focused on Team Fighters and Freedom in their respective battles as normal. The third part, however, intended for 241, would have revolved around the newly founded Secret Freedom Fighters and how they secretly helped to turn the tide for Team Freedom in the previous battle. In the end, the moments with the Secret Freedom Fighters were merely reworked and included in part 2 itself, I should say. So let me reread that. It states, and I quote, "The first change was the Hero's story arc, which was 239 to 240, was originally planned to be a three-parter. The first two parts would have focused on Team Fighters and Freedom in their respective battles as normal. The third part, however, intended for 241, would have revolved around the newly founded Secret Freedom Fighters and how they secretly helped turn the tide for Team Freedom in the previous battle. In the end, the moments with the Secret Freedom Fighters were merely reworked and included in part 2 itself." So basically, the Heroes arc that we got in 39 and 40 was supposed to expand to 3 issues from 239 to 241. So, yeah. The second point, the second change they point out is issue 241's unraveling was first planned as a series of backup stories. Additionally, the story originally ended with Noggis merely tricking Jeffrey St. John. When it was decided that wasn't satisfying enough, or when it was decided that wasn't a satisfying enough ending, the idea of Noggis possessing Jeffrey was made. So yeah, basically, the unraveling part. So in case you don't know what's going on, at this time in story, Noggis had tricked the citizens into making him king and having them turn against Nicole. Now, slowly but surely, the town would start to, start to welcome Nicole back because they started to see some things with her that started to see that they were wrong. Now, at this time as well, Noggis started to go through some kind of change, mutation, if you will, that was making him more monstrous looking than before. So basically, he needed a new body, if you will, to possess, or else he would have not made it, or something would have happened. So originally, he was going to trick Jeffrey St. John on, I guess, into letting himself merge with him or something. But instead, it was just, hey, let's just have Noggis forcibly possess Jeffrey and be done with it. So there you go. All right. And the third and final change they point out in this fifth bullet point is Team Fighter's battle against the Krazood, which was a robotic plant, was initially intended as a story all to itself, sharing space with the Olympic Trials story in 242. When the latter ended up being longer than the original intended, however, the battle was reworked and shown in Unraveling instead. So yeah, because Sega wanted to, like I said, promote the Olympic Games, as well as promote the Sonic and Mario Olympics aim in a sense, it was decided that what was supposed to be a much longer and extended story for the team fighters in the fight against the Krazood was basically edited down and reworked and put into Unraveling instead, which I guess worked, but you could tell. I mean, here's the thing: you could definitely tell during this time that there was some things that were edited out because there were some moments and scenes that just did not make sense. All right. Continuing on, they state, and I quote, all other information known by this point comes only from tidbits dropped by Ian and other creatives, including 1. The earliest draft of Endangered Species was planned as a Sonic Universe arc. Flynn intended to give a rough draft on how, or intends to give a rough draft on how that version of the arc would have played out, as well as the original unedited edition of the main comic. The following subpoints say 1. Flynn stated that both versions had happier endings, unlike the version printed. 2. Aaliyah Baker revealed that the arc would have marked the debut of a new design for Saffron B, who was Charmy B's love interest in the comics, of which she, Aaliyah Baker, designed. She also stated that Saffron would have played a significant role in the arc. 3. Shard and the Krazood originally played no role in the arc. That was so there you go. Shard, who became a part of the Secret Freedom Fighters, was deployed to find maybe some kind of antidote or solution to getting Sally back to normal. And he came across the battle with Sonic, with Team Fighters and the Krazood and this new character called I think this Tasmanian-like character or whatever. So anyway, basically, As we were getting close to endangered species, it was planned that Julie Sue and Saffron were going to play major parts, and this is the story that really exemplified the behind the scenes interference of the lawsuit with Ken Penders, because on the cover, on one of the original covers, you had Julie Sue next to, back to back with Amy Rose. But then that issue was later re-edited to only have Amy Rose. So, yeah. And it was also edited to the point that Saffron, along with Julie Sue and a lot of the echidnas, were all placed into a void by this Tasmanian character. Can't think of his name right now. Trying to think. What was the character's name? I can't think of it right now. Trying to think maybe I got some information here. Yeah, or something. Hold on. Oh, for a sec. Yeah, the basically what I was saying is that Saffron, along with Julie Sue and the rest of the characters, were all sent into a void thanks to a character created by Ian Flynn called Thrash the Devil, who had some kind of prejudice or specious prejudice against the echidnas for some kind of historical reason. So, yeah. Saffron and Julie Sue were supposed to, like I said, play a bigger role, but because of the legal action, it was reworked to where Thrash found these rings, these, I guess, manipulated or I would say corrupted rings, and just decided to use them to banish Saffron, Julie Sue, and the echidnas into an endless void. So, yeah, pretty much killing them off because of the lawsuit. But continuing on, the other points that they bring out on this, the other information that has yet to be revealed. One is Bunnie Rabbot would have been legionized. Artist Tracy Yardlin revealed on Flynn's blog several concept sketches to Bunnie showing off designs to her new robot limbs. Bunnie's silhouette cameo at the end of Sonic Universe 49 hinted towards this new design. It was revealed she was wearing a poncho to obscure her not yet finalized design. Several elements of her new organic body were later adapted for her design in the rebooted post-Super Genesis Wave timeline. Okay, so yeah, basically what you kind of saw with Bunnie, in basically in the post Super Genesis Waves, they put it basically. What was it? 255, I think. 255, issue 255. Those are some of those design elements came from the original design that Tracy Yardlin was going to go with. The next point is Dr. Fentivius would have been a key player in the lead up to 275. That's very interesting. And in the last point, according to Ben Bates, who was one of the artists and I think sometimes one of the co-writers of the book, according to Ben Bates, had it not been for the Worlds Collide crossover moving things around, 250 would have been the issue in which Sally was de-roboticized. So there you go. So basically, her being, captured and all that, kind of stabilized, it was all leading to basically 4 issues later with her being restored and being de-roboticized, but her de-robotization would have given her the design that we all know her as of right now, post-Genesis Waves. Now, finishing up here, it has a section on Worlds Unite, which was the second Sonic and Mega Man crossover and included everyone, including the Freedom Fighters. It states, and I quote, Ian Flynn had revealed a number of details about ideas that were considered for the Worlds Unite crossover, but rejected by Sega. Namely, 1. Including Phantasy Star Online as one of the Sega properties in the crossover. Having X, Mega Man X, join Super Mega Man and Super Sonic for the final battle with Sigma by undergoing a super transformation that would have given him a gold version of his armor from Mega Man X4. And the final unused concept was having Team Dark helping the Naho Freedom Fighters and the Unified Army. Now, in case you guys don't know, Team Dark apparently was killed off towards in the middle of the story as things were starting to pick up. So, yeah, apparently they were supposed to play a bigger role in the conflict. All right. Last section, post-Shattered World Crisis. This says that there were plans to continue the series following the events of the Shattered World Crisis, but the comic was eventually canceled due to Sega severing their license with Archie Comics and switching to IDW publishing. The change prevented these issues from ever being published. However, the artwork for the comic interiors was later released online by the respective artist. We'll go into that real quickly. We have the solicitation. We have Sonic 91. It's basically the issues that would have followed would have been known as Genesis of a Hero. And it states in this solicits that Sonic and Tails head for adventure enter in Genesis of a Hero Part 4. Our celebration of the Blue Bloods' 25th anniversary comes to a close with a look back to the most titanic turning point of the classic era. Sonic and Tails have been diverted, trapped, and attacked all across Angel Island by a mysterious native called Knuckles. Now, deep in the heart of the island, they confront Dr. Eggman's latest minion in an all-out brawl. Now, it does state that after the series was officially confirmed to be canceled, Tracy Yardlin released all 20 of the issue's fully inked pages online and subsequently auctioned them off alongside the few penciled pages from the following issues. The pages that the story would have adapted, or the pages showed that the story would have adapted the events of Sonic and Knuckles from the battle between the two within the Hidden Palace Zone and covering up to events in the Sky Sanctuary Zone. Mecha Sonic would have also appeared. Now they also go on to solicitations for 292, which I do have a printed poster version in my room of, and it states, everything changes when Sonic and his friends go down their branching paths. It says the Shadow World crisis is behind us and the 25th anniversary was well celebrated. So what's next for Sonic and his friends? That's up to them to decide. Sonic is racing around West Side Island on a mission, but for whom? And while Sonic's away, each of his friends make decisions that will plot the course of their lives. Don't miss out on the beginning of a whole new era of Sonic stories. Now, it does state that after the series was officially confirmed to be canceled, Tracy Yardlin released the only 3 pages of the issue that had only made it as far as the penciling stages online and subsequently auctioned them off, alongside the 20 fully inked pages for the previous issue. The pages depict Sonic looking up at the Death Egg and conversations taking place between Sally, Amy, Tails, Rhoda, and Nicole. It says, it finishes out by saying it is believed that this would have led into Sonic Universe's also canceled Freedom Fighters arc. They also have solicitations for 293 that states Sonic and Honey are on the set of the latest greatest superhero show, Sonic Man Heroes. But when Dr. Eggman crashes the scene, ranting and raving about creative differences, things get very interesting. So, yeah, it's very cool. It states that the location depicted on the main cover appears to be the Studiopolis zones, which is one of the new zones in Sonic Mania. They don't have one for 294, but 294 would have been a main story that would have adapted the arcade game Sega Sonic the Hedgehog. The backup story was a pun. They had a backup story which is a pun on Breaking Bad. Then they have solicits for the Sonic Universe Freedom Fighters arc. It says the first one is going to focus on Antoine. It says Antoine takes the stage, and this is for Sonic Universe 95, traveling to his homeland to find some closure to his past, but he and Sonic find a new foe in the empty halls of Castle D. Coolet, in the beginning of a mystical new adventure. Then the next one would have been for Sonic Universe 96, an official solicitation, if you will. My finger hit the mic there. But it says, an official solicitation. Bunnie gets ready for a new venture in Freedom Fighters Part 2. Where there's smoke, there's fire, and in this case, evil too. Bunnie is summoned to Blaze's world in a desperate attempt to repel the invasion of a new sinister force. And then you got 97, doesn't have no solicitation, but does say one of the variant covers has a logo similar to SatAM's logo. And then they have just advertisements for other, compilation issues and stuff that would have followed. But yeah, basically what we get here is, overall, Ian Flynn obviously didn't have as big of a mess when it came to unused concepts. I mean, yeah, some of them may have not been the best idea, like, taking one of the main Sonic Sega game characters and having them, murder an established character, even if they were non-game character, and destroy a location. So, basically it was, basically it was not there. He did have some good ideas and some not so good ideas. He wanted to end 225 with Sally roboticized, but thankfully Paul Kaminsky said no. And basically, except with that situation and a few others, it's like, you could tell that Ian Flynn did his best. I'm not saying he was a master at what he did, but he did pretty much the best he could here. So it definitely shows that he had some potentially good ideas, but some were not so good. And it definitely looked like to me, and this is just what I'm looking at, it definitely looked like to me that he was planning to extend the Mecha Sally arc for at least 4 issues more, from 247 to at least 250. And then kind of build off the ramifications. Like, okay, Sally's back to normal. She's got this new look and everything. That's the first step. Let's get the team back together. And then I guess by 300, it would have culminated in something big. Maybe that would have been the end of the book officially, but we don't know. But yeah, just a lot of good ideas, potentially good ideas. But again, as we know, all those were ixnay due to the behind-the-scenes legal issues with Sega, Archie, and Ken Penders. This is why also apparently we're not seeing any more progress on the Lost Hedgehog Tales deal due to some litigation that could cause a lot of trouble. So that's really about it. But that's really all I can say on the abandoned and unused concepts portion for Ian Flynn. Let me know what you guys think down below. Comment if you like. I got to get ready to go to work in a little bit. Even though I started at 8:45 this morning, I got to catch the bus and wait for a few minutes. But let me know what you guys think down below. Comment if you like. I'd love to hear from each and every one of you on this. And I will talk to you later. The conclusion time, the runtime for this is 49 minutes and 30 seconds.